This FedGov Today program is sponsored by Carasoft. On this edition of FedGov Today with Francis Rose, a tax season full of transformation at the IRS. Time to voice your choice on the rule for CMMC and the year ahead in the cloud at GSA. Welcome to FedGov Today with Francis Rose. The Internal Revenue Service is debuting its direct file service for a group of taxpayers who file basic returns. The Wall Street Journal reports direct files open by invitation only now, but more taxpayers could use it later this filing season. David Padrino is Chief Transformation and Strategy Officer at the IRS. David, welcome. Thanks for joining me today. In an organization like the IRS, how does one or how does a team go about getting something like direct file off the ground that's quite a bit different than what the agency has done in the past?
Yeah, thank you for asking. Well, it all starts by focusing on meeting taxpayers where they are and understanding that taxpayer experience and how they best want to interact with the IRS. So direct file is just one example, but we've been working on improving the online experience for taxpayers so that they have multiple ways to get information from us and to be able to conduct the activities that they need to with us. One example would be allowing them to now upload responses to most of the letters that we send to them, which wasn't available before this filing season. So anchoring on the taxpayer, what services they expect, and then using that to orient our delivery and our execution of services.
How do you navigate the situation that the agency is in? It's well documented what the IT infrastructure of the IRS is like and some of the legacy systems that are there. How do you put all of those pieces together to know what you can improve on, what you can connect to what?
Yeah, there's a couple parts to it that we've been trying to carry forward. The first is having a clear plan of what you're actually trying to prioritize and deliver, and that helps make sure that across the enterprise we're working on the right things in the right order. Then from there, it's about focusing not on, hey, let's build all the requirements right now over the course of X months, then we'll take a long time to figure out a procurement, then in a year or two you'll start seeing the results from that. We're trying to shorten those time frames so that we're delivering more incrementally and focusing on smaller deliveries that taxpayers can experience and then give us feedback on how they're going, and then using that to build over time. Not trying to say that it's easy, and there is quite a bit to do, but by focusing on those outcomes, the things that taxpayers are looking for from us, we're going to be able to hopefully accelerate and make sure we're doing the right things first.
What is the feedback like that you're receiving from taxpayers overall? I think everybody understands that IRS is not an agency that a lot of people have fun interacting with. How does one go about then going to those people and saying, we really do mean it, we really do want to get feedback from you about how we can improve?
Yeah, great question. So there are many different avenues. Part of it is around making sure that we're gathering info that comes in from the call centers that we have set up and understanding the types of questions that taxpayers are asking and where they're asking about services that maybe we don't have today, and using that as information for what we're going to build from there. The other is around leveraging the work we go out to gather taxpayer experience information, how they're interacting with us, where things are working or not working. Engaging in forums where we're communicating out what we're working on and being on shows like this to try to communicate what we're building and how we're trying to orient around taxpayer needs to make that interaction easier and to have people be able to fill their requirements the way that works best for them.
I think folks watching this show understand what the mission of the IRS is. When you came into the agency, what did Commissioner Werfel tell you he wanted your personal mission to be as the person taking on this job?
He said that my role is really about helping the IRS take an enterprise approach to transformation. So I help create glue between the other IRS leaders who are really driving the change in their business domains, but by making sure that we've got a clear set of priorities that we're working on and that we've got the plan to deliver them and that the right people are together making decisions about moving all of that forward. So it's about helping to bring us together to have that enterprise approach, which folks who work in federal government know can be very difficult when you're trying to drive change across many different parts of the organization. You need to bring people together, clearly have a decision on what we're doing, and then help carry that forward and have the clear plan to be able to do it with specific outcomes that you're trying to deliver, so we know what we're marching towards and why it matters.
And that, I imagine, is potentially one of the biggest challenges of your job, because you want to march toward particular marks. You want to make sure you're hitting certain things, but you also have this kind of 10-year overlay in terms of the strategy that Commissioner Werfel laid out before you got there, and what the funding situation might look like or might not look like from Congress and all of that. Figuring out all of that, putting all that together. Am I on the right track there?
Absolutely, and I think we really have to follow two tracks with that. One is there's certain types of change that just take time. Some of these large IT infrastructure projects that will just take time to build systems that can't fail and need to deliver every filing season, that takes time. But at the other track we need to follow is making sure, like as I was trying to describe earlier, that we're delivering incrementally, that every filing season taxpayers experience something better than they did before, and we're anchoring around those moments where people are paying attention and need better service and engagement from us. So we're trying to work both of those tracks at once. And that's, we think, how we'll get to some of that long-term transformation that we need, both for that IT infrastructure, the things that take a long time, as well as the services that we're putting out at each filing season and in between as well.
If I just take the words in your job title at face value, at their definitions, you're working on two tracks also. Transformation strikes me as a tactical job of changing something, as you just described, from one tax season to the next. And strategic is that 10-year view that Congress had in mind when they passed the legislation that empowered you to have this money for that period of time. What does that look like from a personal point of view? How do you decide how much time you delegate to the tactical and how much to the strategic, or how do you manage that in whatever way you do?
Yeah. So we really, I think about the strategy part is what are we going to do differently? And the transformation as how do we tie it all together so it actually happens? Because the amount of change, the number of strategies we have going is dramatic. It covers the whole agency. And so making sure that we can actually deliver on that requires a lot of coordination. I think that the IRS leadership team in developing the strategic operating plan did a great job in laying out many of the strategies that need to be there, from improving live assistance, making sure that we're doing enforcement in the most effective and fair way possible, IT infrastructure, people, all the pieces are there, and it dives into some of the specific strategies. A big part of the role that I focus on is around tying that together with the right plan and the right roadmap to actually march on a quarter by quarter basis towards making sure all those pieces happen. So I guess to answer your question directly, right now there's a lot more transformation, but getting the strategy right at key points every year, 2 years is really critical. Once a big part of the change might hopefully come to being completed, and then you're able to put more resource and time to another.
We have about a minute left, but you kind of went where I wanted to close out, which is one advantage the strategic operating plan gives you, it seems to me as an outsider, is the marks are very clear about what you're expected to hit. Nobody has to doubt what you're measuring for success, right?
That's right. We were comprehensive by design in the strategic operating plan. I think we certainly, and we wrote this in the plan, you learn more as you go, and you might adjust some of those milestones and you emphasize certain things more. But the plan is really a way of saying to the public, we're committed to broad scale change across huge portions of what the IRS does. And now our work is on really trying to implement it in the most effective way we can.
David Padrino, it's great to have you on the program. Thanks very much for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
You can read more about transformation at the IRS on today's show page at fedgovtoday.com. Up next, time to voice your choice on the rule for CMMC. FedGov Today with Francis Rose is back in a moment. Here's John Veal from Cloudera on innovation in government at DOTUS, brought to you by Carahsoft.
Given the advancements in the emerging tech, things like generative AI, et cetera, I think a lot of people are asking that, right? How can we best adopt this to benefit our country, our service members, and everyone as a whole, right? I think it's going to be really important for agencies as they adopt this technology to understand that it's changing, it's morphing over time, right? And so, however we want to go solve these problems adopting this, right? We have to make sure that whatever we're choosing to go after these really important mission sets needs to be open, needs to be extensible, needs to be future-proofed.
For more, go to innovationingov.com. Welcome back. Commenters have until the end of next month to voice their opinions on the Defense Department's proposed rule for the cybersecurity maturity model certification. The department says it'll take comments on the new rule until February 26th. Alex Whitworth is sales director at Carahsoft. Alex, welcome. It's great to have you on the program. What is industry's role in helping the department move to the CMMC vision that they have?
Yeah, perfect. Appreciate you having me. So, we're really seeing industry react to the scale challenges that are being created by CMMC. We're seeing industry realign and create new solutions that are tailored to help the defense industrial base increase their cyber resilience. So the advisory services, managed security services, the purpose-built technology platforms that are tuned for CMMC are really emerging to help DIB organizations reach CMMC compliance. And it's this growing variety of choice that's going to allow for DIB organizations to have the ideal fit in their organization based on their unique environment, their unique in-house talent and resources, their unique budget constraints related to CMMC compliance. So the innovation and energy around CMMC are really breeding competition, and I think that's going to help bring down costs for the defense industrial base to help achieve CMMC compliance.
When you talk about scale challenges, are you just talking about the challenges in getting individual companies to authorities to operate, or is there some other kind of challenge in scale that you see coming in CMMC?
Sure. I think that the scale is really more about creating an ecosystem that has those solutions and services that are tuned for CMMC requirements. So there's options available for defense industrial based organizations.
What's that growing variety of choice that you expect to see that in a mature environment like this?
Sure. We're already seeing DoD suppliers increase their cybersecurity maturity related, in preparation for CMMC compliance. And then we're seeing civilian side of government and some of our foreign allied partners pick up programs like CMMC as well. On the civilian side, the DHS has their cybersecurity readiness evaluation factor, which is a questionnaire-based approach that's focused on the controls of NIST 800-171 and NIST 800-172. So same controls as CMMC. GSA, the General Services Administration, has released a draft questionnaire there on cybersecurity supply chain risk management, also based on NIST CSF, their cybersecurity framework. So very CMMC-like in its goal and intention. And then thinking about our foreign allies, the Canadians, for example, there's many Canadian industrial-based companies that have US DoD customers and will need to comply with CMMC to maintain those contracts. And they have a challenge where they're lacking the local infrastructure of services providers and assessors to help them meet that CMMC compliance level. So if Canada as a nation decides to implement CMMC, it will help create that local infrastructure to support their defense industrial base. It'll increase the cyber resilience of Canadian defense industrial base, and then it'll maintain the competitiveness and the ability to maintain those U.S. contracts for those companies.
Very quickly, what's industry's role in making all of this happen company to company rather than just company to the Defense Department?
Yeah, very true. I'll talk about Carahsoft for a second. We're proud to be part of the CMMC ecosystem. We have 800 folks in our company that are focused on cybersecurity. We support 150 cybersecurity vendors as a company, and we focus on delivering better together solutions so that our customers can get more value out of the investments they've already made in technology by integrating 2 or more siloed technologies to automate actions. And we partner with companies that address every CMMC capability domain. So we understand that it's difficult to implement new technologies. It's costly, it's time consuming. So you really have to get it right the first time. And Carahsoft is here to help organizations evaluate the options that are out there and make good decisions.
It's great to have you on the program. Thanks very much for your time.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
You can read more about the new CMMC rule on today's show page at fedgovtoday.com. Up next, the year ahead in the cloud at GSA. FedGov Today with Francis Rose continues in a moment. If you want insights from agency and industry leaders on the latest topics in technology, management, workforce, defense, and acquisition, sign up for the FedGov Today podcast with me, Francis Rose. I release new episodes every Tuesday and Thursday, so you'll stay up to date on the issues that matter most to federal government leaders. Listen at fedgovtoday.com and everywhere you get your shows. Don't miss out on the conversation. Follow the podcast today. Welcome back. An Emerging Technologies and Innovation Summit is coming this year from the General Services Administration's IT Modernization Division. It's just one activity to the division's planning for fiscal 2024. Dan Pomeroy is Deputy Associate Administrator in the Office of Technology Policy at GSA. Dan, welcome. It's great to see you again. What is the mission of your office and what it does inside OGP at GSA?
Well, thanks for asking, and it's great to be back with you, Francis. We have the pleasure and the responsibility to help the federal government improve their technologies and their investments and make those more efficient and effective for the American taxpayer. We do this through a variety of ways, and one of the ways in which the IT Modernization Division does this is through outreach, consistent outreach, high-level outreach through what we call a community of practice. We're very proud of these community of practices, and we have multiple communities of practice across multiple disciplines. When it comes to IT modernization, we've built from very humble beginnings with a small group numbering in the dozens, and we're up to about 2,000 members of this particular community, where we provide resources to help agencies not only look at their digital applications, but also look at their infrastructure. Look at their cloud modernization, look at what they're doing on premise and data centers, and also recently improving their IPv6 or Internet Protocol version 6 adoption as well.
How has that transitioned over time? How has that evolved given the way that some of the technologies that you just described have evolved, Dan?
Yeah, that's a great question. We really do have to be nimble, and part of that is listening first as a policy organization and listening to the practitioners, the people who are getting their hands dirty on the ground floor, coming to our communities of practice, sharing lessons learned and successes with each other. We don't take the position that we have every answer to everybody's question all the time, but we do want to convene a large group, a positive group, where problems can be identified and cooperative solutions can be leveraged across multiple agencies.
I note in your fiscal 2023 review that one of the things you're doing, in addition to the event that I mentioned, is establishing a low-code, no-code subcommunity. As you build these subcommunities, how much of the information that percolates within them comes from you and your team, and how much of it comes from the other members of it sharing information with each other?
I'm so glad you asked that. That's a fantastic question. Yeah, we're looking forward to building that one up. Low code, no code is certainly an important way to get IT modernization out quickly. What we did this year is we released a cloud operations and best practices guide. Now that document was written and edited by over 80 federal employees across 30 agencies, large and small. And throughout the whole entire process, we had that expertise. It was not GSA centralized expertise. It was GSA using convening power to bring in experts and to challenge each other and to produce the best artifacts that we can. Another artifact that we produced was a small agency CIO handbook as well. We realized that the large departments have needs, and also the small agency CIOs also have needs, and we are doing everything we can to buttress the entire federal government, not just the larger 24 CFO Act agencies.
I love the word artifact. It appeals to the history buff in me.
That's right.
And I note that one of the other activities planned for this year is building additional artifacts to support sustainable IT acquisition, development, and implementation for IT modernization efforts across the federal government. How do you decide, or how do you determine you've got the feedback that you want to determine what the artifacts are that you want to produce moving forward?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. We all know how important sustainability is. It's one of those win-wins, as our administrator, Robin Carnahan, would like to say. And we get to save on the cost of energy, but we also, by saving that, we can also produce positive environmental outcomes. So how do we determine that is largely driven by the community themselves, right? We have an open process. We have an executive board with a diverse background. We have lots of people from diverse backgrounds that help charter out what we do. And it's also about listening to the needs of what's happening next and what are the current pressures. We don't want to just keep hitting the same note on the piano about what was important 3 or 4 years ago. It's important to listen and come up with the next thing next.
How do you decide if there's something that you have been focused on that maybe, as you just said, isn't as hot as it used to be, or pretty much everybody has the resources that they need and that it's okay to move on from something?
Right. Usually, you know, in all of these life cycles for IT modernizations, there are concepts that have not been implemented yet, and then they are early in the implementation, and if we have a few implementers, and then it becomes a general implementation in the bell curve, as it were. In those cases, what we're definitely always looking for ways to improve, and we look back at our old documentation, our old playbooks, and we dust those things off and say, okay, it's 3 or 4 years later. Is there something we can do to improve this? Or are we listening? Is there something overcome by events that's in this guidance that we need to improve?
One of the things that I've noted about all of the work that you and your team do all over OGP is that idea that these things are always living documents, is the emphasis that's made each time that comes out. Why is that important, Dan?
We don't believe in ivory tower policy guidance. We don't believe in a top-down approach. We believe in a community-focused approach. So, like I'd mentioned before, the feedback is really important. And if we get feedback that what we have produced is not as useful, perhaps maybe it's not downloaded as many times, perhaps someone in the community says, I did that, but it looks a little stale. Those are great feedback points for us to come back through and make updates.
What makes good feedback from those communities? What are the things that people do in those organizations to be a good partner, to be a good collaborator in those organizations?
Well, it helps that they're always honest. And they always tell us where we're at. You know, being vocal and honest is really very important. The wallflowers in the room are there to learn, and that's great. But to help us course correct, we're going to need as many voices at the table as we possibly can find.
How did you and your colleagues determine this group? We're going to put a link, by the way, to the fiscal 23 report on the show page today at fedgovtoday.com so people can see it. How did you determine that those things that you want to accomplish in 24 were the places where you wanted to put your chips on the table? And how will you determine next year or whatever that you've hit the mark on all of them?
Well, there's 2 major drivers. I mentioned community, but the other is stakeholder drivers. We have a strong partnership with the Executive Office of the President and the Office of Management and Budget. Part of the stakeholders as well is Congress. So just passed in the last National Defense Authorization Act, the Federal Data Center Enhancement Act was passed as part of that, and they've identified GSA to help set standards for data centers, which are important, right? And unlike other data center optimization initiative activities that we did, in the 2016 era forward, the law prescribes that we not only look at federal facilities, but also lease facilities, co-location data centers as well. And so we'll be partnering with Department of Energy and the Executive Office of the President, OMB, White House OSTP, if they're interested, to make sure that whatever is put out as far as standards for data centers in all of those various categories, that the guidance is as good as it can possibly be.
I'm very confident OSTP will be interested in working with you, Dan. I'm pretty confident about that. As you judge these things on a personal level, how do you determine this working group is working to the maximum extent that we want it to? What do you look for in terms of success coming out of those groups?
That's great. That's a great question. Growth and engagement. Number one, we've seen amazing growth in this specific area. And the engagement is that the participation doesn't wane, it continues to wax. That's also important. External feedback is also really important. When our stakeholders continue to give us additional work to do that they didn't ask us to do in years past, that's usually an indication of confidence. And so you said personally, when they hand us more work, it's always a good feeling. And we've got great folks and great experts in GSA that are here to help the federal government modernize.
Dan Pomeroy, thanks very much for joining me today. I really appreciate your time.
It was a real pleasure, Francis.
You can find a link to that IT Modernization Division FY23 report and the preview for 24 on today's show page at fedgovtoday.com. FedGov Today continues in just a moment. If you want insights from agency and industry leaders on the latest topics in technology, management, workforce, defense, and acquisition, sign up for the FedGov Today podcast with me, Francis Rose. I release new episodes every Tuesday and Thursday, so you'll stay up to date on the issues that matter most to federal government leaders. Listen at fedgovtoday.com and everywhere you get your shows. Don't miss out on the conversation. Follow the podcast today. Welcome back. In today's event spotlight, West 2024 is coming from AFCEA International and the U.S. Naval Institute. West is back at the San Diego Convention Center February 13th through 15th. This year's edition has a great lineup of sea service speakers, the largest exhibit floor in its history, lots of special events and networking, and a lot more. You can read more and register at westconference.org. FedGov Today TV returns next Sunday morning at 10:30 with the Chief Transformation Officer at OPM, Catherine Manfrey, and OMB's Lauren DeYoung-Schulman talking about the President's management agenda. I'm Francis Rose. See you next Sunday. Thanks for watching. Have a great week. Here's John Veal from Cloudera on innovation in government at DOTUS, brought to you by Carahsoft.
Given the advancements in the emerging tech, things like generative AI, et cetera, I think a lot of people are asking that, right? How can we best adopt this to benefit our country, our service members, and everyone as a whole, right? I think it's going to be really important for agencies as they adopt this technology to understand that it's changing, it's morphing over time, right? And so however we want to go solve these problems adopting this, right, we have to make sure that whatever we're choosing to go after these really important mission sets needs to be open, needs to be extensible, needs to be future-proofed.
For more, go to innovationingov.com.